Imagine spending nearly 8 years of your life stuck in a cell, waiting for a day in court that never seems to come, only to have the state drop a massive part of their case against you just 24 hours before you were meant to stand trial. As of January 20th, 2026, the YNW Melly saga has taken its most interesting turn yet. The witness tampering trial that was supposed to be the state's final hammer against the Florida rapper has officially collapsed into dust. Prosecutors abruptly dismissed all 4 major charges, including tampering with a witness, directing a criminal gang, and even solicitation to commit unaliving. It's crazy how sudden this decision was, making it look like a total surrender on the very cusp of jury selection. Melly's newly retained legal team must already be taking a victory lap, claiming that it became immediately apparent to them that no crimes had actually occurred. They're calling out the state for letting these baseless charges hang over Melly for 652 days, only to walk away when it was time to put up or shut up. But don't get caught up with all the headlines, this victory is bittersweet. While the internet is buzzing with free Melly memes and celebration, the reality of the situation is much darker. Even with this win, the shadows of the 2018 Jeep Compass incident still loom large. The stakes for his future are still immensely high. And while one battle is over, the war for his life is just entering its most pivotal phase. Could this be the first sign of a total collapse in the prosecution strategy? Or are they just clearing the deck for a final lethal play in 2027? To understand why this dismissal is such a monumental shift, you have to go back to the moment everything began to unravel for one of the most polarizing figures in modern music. Long before the courtroom sketches and the prison jumpsuits, Jamel Demons was a kid from Gifford, Florida, a small overlooked town where he says nobody ever makes it out to describe it. Raised by a single mother who had him at just 14 years old, Melly's childhood was a blend of extreme struggle and early brilliance. He grew up idolizing Michael Jackson, studying the king of pop's every move to learn how to capture an audience, but the environment around him was far from a fairy tale. By the time he was in his mid-teens, Melly was already deeply entrenched in the streets, finding himself in a shootout near his high school at just 16. It was during a year-long stint in juvie that he began to refine a melodic, soulful sound, a type of harmony that would soon make him a global superstar. His breakout hit, Murder on My Mind, became a haunting prophecy. Written while he was still behind bars, the track detailed unaliving ideations with such vivid, raw emotion that it eventually became a central piece of evidence for the state. But for the fans, the song wasn't just music, it was a window into a fractured psyche. Melly has long claimed to suffer from a split personality, introducing the world to Melvin, the dark, rough alter ego who emerges when the pressure gets too high, while Melly was the smiling, charming artist who collaborated with Kanye. Melvin was the shadow that fans speculated was responsible for his darker impulses. This psychological mystery created a cult-like fascination around him, but it also gave prosecutors a narrative they could use to convince a jury that his lyrics weren't just art, but an outlet where he could express what he really felt. In late 2018, that creative darkness collided with a brutal reality. Just as Melly was reaching the peak of his fame, 2 of his closest friends and YNW collective brothers, Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr., were found unalive in a Jeep Compass. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the industry, but as the investigation unfolded, the story of a random drive-by shooting he concocted began to crumble. The state didn't see a grieving friend, they saw a cold-blooded life-ender who had turned on his own brothers. They claimed that the same Melvin persona he bragged about in his music had finally stepped out of the booth and into the streets. This was the moment the Gifford star was extinguished, replaced by a high-stakes legal drama that has kept the world's eyes locked on a Florida courtroom for nearly a decade. The case against Melly isn't just based on a hunch. There's a whole forensic puzzle that prosecutors claim leads directly back to him. According to the state's narrative, the tragic events of October 2018 were cold, calculated betrayal. Nothing random about them at all. The scene initially looked like a classic drive-by shooting. A Jeep Compass riddled with bullets, 2 young men unalive inside, and a story of a narrow escape. However, when investigators started looking at all the angles, the story began to fall apart. Forensic experts testified that the trajectory of the bullets didn't make sense for a drive-by. They claimed that the fatal shots were actually fired from inside the car, specifically from the rear left passenger seat, the exact spot where surveillance footage showed Melly sitting just hours earlier. The prosecution's theory suggests that Melly and his partner in crime YNW Bortlen didn't just end their friends, they allegedly spent hours orchestrating an elaborate cover-up. They claimed the pair drove to a secluded area near the Everglades, stepped out of the vehicle, and fired more shots back into the Jeep from the outside to create the appearance of an ambush. One of the most damning pieces of evidence presented was the stippling found on the victims, tiny burns on the skin that only occur when a gun is fired at extremely close range. This physical evidence, combined with cell tower data that reportedly placed the group in a dead zone for nearly 40 minutes before arriving at the hospital, painted a haunting picture of a deliberate staged execution. But even with all those technical details, the smoking gun for many remains a single digital footprint. Prosecutors highlighted a suspicious cryptic Instagram DM sent by Melly shortly after the incident. When a friend asked how he was holding up after losing his brothers, Melly reportedly replied with 4 simple words, "I did that. Shh." To the state, it clearly looks like a cold-blooded confession. To the defense, it's a piece of slang taken out of context by an investigation that was guessing from day one. They argued that the police were so focused on a high-profile target that they ignored the lack of a murder weapon or any DNA linking Melly to the trigger. It's a battle of high-tech forensics versus a total lack of physical proof, and it's the reason this case has remained in a deadlock for years. In the summer of 2023, the world sat on the edge of its seat as the fate of YNW Melly was placed in the hands of the jury. After weeks of high-stakes testimony, it felt like a conviction was inevitable, but then everything went silent. For 3 agonizing days, the jury was locked away, and what was happening behind those closed doors would eventually leak out as a story of pure chaos. When the judge finally declared a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury, the initial report said it was a 9-3 split in favor of guilt, but that wasn't the full story. Soon after, reports surfaced from within the room that painted a picture of a rogue juror who allegedly turned the entire process into a nightmare. According to anonymous accounts from other jurors, one woman reportedly came into the room with a set mind and refused to budge from day one. They described her as explosive and manipulative, claiming she would shut down any attempt at rational debate by yelling insults and even using homophobic slurs against anyone who disagreed with her. The most shocking claim was that the jury was actually 11-1 in favor of a manslaughter conviction at one point, but this lone holdout managed to sway 2 other jurors to her side through sheer intimidation. She allegedly told the group she was done and crossed her arms, refusing to participate further, which effectively paralyzed the entire legal process. The drama got so intense that some jurors were reportedly shaking by the time they walked out of the room. Melly's mother, Jamie Demons King, fueled the fire by claiming the split was actually 9-3 in favor of innocence, creating a massive he said, she said battle in the court of public opinion. While the mistrial was a temporary win for Melly, saving him from a potential death sentence that week, it also left a bitter taste in the mouths of the victims' families who felt that justice had been hijacked by a single chaotic personality. It was a moment that proved just how thin the line is between freedom and a life sentence, and it set the stage for the state to come back even harder with a new plan to ensure he never saw the light of day again. Like, assuming he's guilty, can you imagine losing a loved one in such a way, then witnessing justice slip by because of one unpredictable a-hole? After the 2023 mistrial, the state of Florida realized they were in a dangerous position. Their slam dunk case had failed to convince a jury, and the momentum was starting to swing back toward Melly. To regain control, prosecutors launched what the defense called a retaliatory second front. In late 2024, they hit Melly with a wave of witness tampering and conspiracy charges that were designed to paint him as a puppet master, running a criminal empire from behind a glass partition. They claimed that while Melly was locked away, he had developed a sophisticated system to communicate with the outside world, bypass jail monitoring, and ensure that key voices stayed hush. The centerpiece of this new trap was Melly's ex-girlfriend, Mariah Hamilton. Prosecutors alleged that Melly, using a fellow inmate named Terrence Mathis as a go-between, had been passing secret letters and making unrecorded calls to his co-defendant Bortlen. The goal? To keep Mariah far away from the witness stand. The state argued that Melly was leveraging his alleged status as a high-ranking member of the Blood Street gang to apply pressure where it mattered most. To back this up, they pointed to the fact that Mariah had failed to show up for a crucial deposition in 2023, claiming her absence was not coincidental but rather the direct result of a stay-away order issued from Melly's cell. But the tampering went even deeper than just making phone calls. The state added charges of directing a criminal gang and solicitation to commit unaliving, suggesting that Melly's influence was straight up lethal. These new allegations hung over Melly for 652 days, serving as a massive insurance policy for the state. Even if he eventually beat the unaliving charges, these tampering felonies carried enough weight to keep him in prison for the rest of his life. For his legal team, it was clear the state couldn't prove he pulled the trigger in 2018, so they were trying to prove he was a gang leader in 2024. It was a high-stakes chess move intended to break Melly's spirit and complicate his defense until he had nowhere left to run. Just 24 hours ago on January 20th, 2026, the entire landscape of this legal battle changed with a single filing from the Broward County State Attorney's Office. With jury selection for the witness tampering trial literally set to begin that morning, prosecutors filed a nolle prosa notice. What is that, I hear you ask? This means a prosecutor has decided to drop or stop pursuing certain criminal charges against the accused, essentially halting the case without necessarily declaring they find them innocent, which effectively drops all 4 of the tampering and gang-related charges against Melly. This wasn't just a minor delay, it was a total abandonment of the charges they had spent nearly 2 years building. The sudden move sent all kinds of ripples through the community, leaving many to wonder how a case that was described as bulletproof could disappear into thin air just as the cameras were about to roll. While the state hasn't released a full public statement as of the publishing of this video, reports from the courtroom suggest a major weakness in their strategy: a hostile witness. It's been said that the key individual the state needed to secure a conviction, likely the same person Melly was accused of intimidating, simply refused to play ball. Without that testimony, the prosecution's narrative of jailhouse kites and gang influence was reduced to hearsay. Melly's newly retained legal team, including high-profile attorneys like Drew Findling, didn't hold back. They pointed out that it took the state 652 days to reach a conclusion that they say was obvious from day one, that no crime had actually occurred. They framed this as a case of the state overreaching and finally being forced to admit they had nothing. This collapse has completely flipped the script for the defense. For years, the prosecution used these tampering charges to keep Melly in highly restrictive conditions, arguing that he was a danger to the integrity of the court. Now that those charges are gone, his team is already looking for his release from custody. They argued that the areas the state used to keep him locked away have been abandoned, and it's time to let him go home while he waits for the final showdown. The momentum has officially shifted, and for the first time in a long time, the state looks like it's on the defensive. But while one fire has been put out, the biggest battle of his life is still burning on the horizon. While the dismissal of the tampering charges is a massive win for Melly's legal team, it doesn't change the grim reality of his day-to-day life. As of January 2026, Jamel Demons has officially entered his 8th year of pre-trial detention. To put that into perspective, he has spent nearly 3,000 days inside a Broward County cell. This staggering delay has sparked a fierce debate about the right to a speedy trial, with Melly's lawyers arguing that the state is essentially using the jail system to punish him before a jury ever delivers a final verdict. Does he deserve it? If the allegations are true, maybe. Regardless, he's become a symbol of a legal system that moves at a glacial pace, leaving a high-profile artist in a state of permanent limbo while his career and youth slowly slip away. The conditions of his confinement have become so severe that Melly recently filed a federal lawsuit against the Broward County Sheriff's Office, alleging cruel and unusual punishment. According to the suit, he's been kept in administrative segregation, which his team argues is just a fancy name for solitary confinement. For years, the documents claim he has been subjected to extreme isolation, with restricted access to basic needs and almost no contact with the outside world. One detail in the filing is the claim that Melly hasn't been allowed to see or even speak to his own mother in over 3 years. His defense argues that these conditions aren't about security, but about breaking his spirit and making it impossible for him to assist in his own defense. This limbo has also created a bizarre disconnect between his life and his music. While Melly sits in a cell, his songs continue to rack up millions of streams, and those free Melly posts remains a constant cry in the comments section of every rap blog. But the man behind the music is reportedly a shell of his former self. His legal team describes a person who is struggling to maintain his mental health under the weight of 24/7 surveillance and the constant threat of a death sentence. By the time his murder retrial finally begins in January 2027, the world will be looking at a man who has been away for so long that the superstar who recorded Murder on My Mind will feel like a ghost from a different era. The question could be more than if he's guilty or innocent. It could also be how a human being can truly survive 8 years of this kind of pressure without losing themselves entirely. The road to freedom for Melly now leads to one final definitive destination, the January 2027 murder retrial. With the witness tampering charges officially scrubbed from the record as of yesterday, both sides are clearing the deck for a final showdown where the death penalty is still very much on the table. This dismissal isn't just a legal win, it's a massive shift in momentum that proves the state's narrative can fall apart under pressure. As Melly's new elite legal team prepares to dismantle the 2018 forensics, the world is left wondering if this is the setup for the biggest comeback in rap history, or simply the calm before a final lethal strike. After nearly a decade in limbo, the final chapter of the Melly story is finally getting underway, and the outcome will decide if Melvin ever hears the sound of a recording studio again, or if he'll spend the rest of his life behind a glass partition. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about all these developments in the comments. If you like this breakdown, drop a like as it helps out the channel, and while you're there, why not go ahead and subscribe. Till the next one.